an interesting story. Today's story is an interesting story, but it's also a heartwarming personal story. And so we're going to share that with you today. But as always, we asked before we get too much started on this show for you to go ahead and share this interview. That's right. Please go ahead and share it because I know it's going to touch your hearts today. And as I always say, friends don't let friends miss out on Ask Sharifah. So today's guest his story is how he went from corporate America, working at his position for over 30 years, to now following a passion in his heart. Good afternoon, Mr. Steve Snyder. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I was reading through your story, and some stories I kind of want to applaud as far as business, and it's a business, but yours is so personal that it touched my heart. So we're going to talk a little bit about where you were and then where you are now. So you were working at your company for over 36 years, and tell us about that, and then tell us what made you decide to change your life.
Okay. Yeah, I had a 40 career in sales and sales management. In the last 36, as you mentioned, we're with a company called Vision Service Plan, VSP, which provides vision care as an employee benefit that corporations offer their employees for eye examinations, glasses, contact lenses. And I was in sales and sales management working with them. It was a great career. Traveled a lot around the United States. But I retired from that career job in 2009. And that's when I really had the time to delve into my dad's World War II history in more detail. At that time, I had no intention of writing a book at all. My parents had kept a lot of material from the war years, and I just wanted to go through all that information and kind of organize it and learn a few more details. And there were a couple items that were really significant. One was a diary that my dad wrote while he was missing in action after being shot down by German fighters over Belgium. And that is just absolutely riveting. And the other item were all the letters that my dad had written to my mother while he was stationed in England. And reading those were just absolutely fascinating. I became fascinated with the story of my dad and his crew, and it became my passion. And I started doing lots and lots of research. And 3 years into it, I just came to the conclusion that the story of my dad and his crew was so unique, so compelling, that it needed to be told. People needed to read about it. So I decided to write a book.
Okay, so you're very passionate about it. What point did you decide to focus on this and leave your job?
Well, I really didn't leave my career job to write the book. It was just time. I'd been there long enough, and so I decided to retire. Mm-hmm. And then after I retired, I was like, a typical retiree. I was sleeping in late and taking naps and long walks and reading books and taking it easy. And but then I got interested in the story, and the more I learned, the more passionate I became, and it's really changed my life. Really now I'm working full-time again, basically promoting the book. I go to air shows all around the United States, signing copies of the book. I do a lot of speaking, make PowerPoint presentations to all sorts of different organizations, and spend hours every day on the internet and social media and just promoting the book.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. Hours after you retire on social media promoting the book. What made you decide to just do it all yourself as opposed to maybe hiring a company to do promotion? What really made you passionate about getting out there on social media, on the internet, in public speaking engagements, and promoting your book yourself?
Well, after I wrote the manuscript, then I had no writing background or training at all. After I wrote the manuscript, then I had to publish it. I didn't know how to do that, and I investigated various means, and I decided to form my own publishing company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I formed a one-person limited liability company called Seabreeze Publishing, which is the name of the street that I live on in Hill Beach, California. Mm-hmm. And then I contracted with independent professionals for all the associated services, such as the book cover, editing, interior layout, printing the book, etc. So it's really my baby. I didn't use a publisher, and I'm pretty once I get involved in something, I'm really passionate about it and very disciplined and competitive and dedicated. And so I want, as I said, it's such an amazing story. I just thought a lot of people need to hear about this. And the only way to do that is to promote it. Basically, I'm just doing the same thing I did in my career job. Instead of selling vision care, I'm basically selling the story and the book. So really, I'm doing the same thing I did during my career, and that's approaching people to tell them about something and get them interested in it.
Wow. You mentioned that you found your dad's diary as well as some of the letters that he wrote to your mom. What stood out in those letters and in the diary that you felt that this needs to be shared with the world, as opposed to, some people when they're going through their parents' belongings just feel like, oh, this is for the family. This is just for us. Why did you think that it needed to be shared with the world?
Well, the diary my dad went into detail. He was a pretty good writer too. He went into detail about the plane being attacked by the German fighters, and it's on fire, and they all have to bail out, and a couple of men were killed in the plane. And I mean, it's really thrilling. And so that was the story behind the diary. The letters, my dad, they loved each other dearly. They had been fairly newly married. And my dad had a little 1-year-old baby girl. In fact, he named his B-17 bomber after my oldest sister, Susan Ruth Snyder, who was 1 year old at the time that he went overseas. And in the letters, of course, they exchanged, their love for one another. But my dad was also very candid about what was going on back in England. He talked about what bombing missions were like, what life was like on the base, what life was like in London and England at the time, escapades of him and his crew. And like I said, it was just fascinating to learn so much about what was going on at that time.
We are live today with Mr. Steve Snyder, where he's telling us about his book, Shot Down. We have quite a few people joining us today. I want to say good afternoon to Francis, Tammy, Edmund, Clyde, Ron, Manuel, Rachel, Elizabeth. Thank you all for joining this episode. It's a very interesting one, but if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please feel free to join the conversation. Mr. Snyder, you're the way you explained the book and what you read. Now, do you know did your father tell you about the diary, or did he just write it secretly, or was it one of those things where he always said, son, one day you'll know the full truth? How did this come about?
Well, no, I knew he had the diary, and
okay.
I had read that. Growing up, I knew the basic of my dad's World War II history, but like most World War II veterans, they didn't really talk about it much. It wasn't until 1989 that a memorial was built in southern Belgium to my dad and his crew. And he went over with the 3 other crew members that were still living at the time for the dedication. And he was reunited with all these Belgian people who hid him from the Germans after he bailed out, and saw these houses where he was hidden. And that brought it all back, and he started talking about it after that. And then a few years later, in 1994, I took my first trip to Belgium with my parents, and that's when it became personal for me, because I saw all these places firsthand as well. All the events took place in southern Belgium, just north of the French border, which is very rural country and farmland, and nothing's really changed in hundreds of years there. So all these locations are basically still intact where all the events took place. So it's really neat to go visit. I've been to Belgium 5 times, and I'm going for a 6th time this fall.
Oh, wow. So I'm just looking around, just being my inquiring mind. Is that a picture of your father with his crew behind you?
Yeah. This is him and his crew, a B-17. I don't know if you can see this.
Hold it up a little bit. Yes. Okay. Oh, how cool.
A B-17 bomber had a 10-man crew. They had 4 officers who were kneeling in front. My dad is on the lower, is over here. He was the first pilot, and as such, the commander of the plane and the crew. And then there were 6 enlisted men who were basically gunners. So the book really tells about what happened to each member of the crew after the plane was shot down, and about all the Belgian people that risked their lives trying to help them. 5 of the crew made it back, but 5 of them did not.
Wow. So in your diary, your dad actually kept track of what happened to all 10 men after this?
No, my dad had no idea what happened to the other members of the crew.
Okay.
Uh, After he bailed out, he was totally separated.
Mm-hmm.
He was missing in action for 7 months after he bailed out, but he evaded capture from the Germans. He was hidden by Belgian people for a while. Then he got tired of hiding, so he joined the French resistance and started sabotaging German convoys until finally the US armies came up through France after D-Day, and then he met up with them and made it back to England. But he didn't know when he was in Belgium and in hiding and missing in action, he didn't know what happened to any of the members of the crew.
During this 7 months that he was in hiding, did your family know, any news or anything, or you just nobody's heard from him since?
The plane was shot down on February 8th of 1944. My mother got a telegram, or really all the relatives of the crew got a telegram from the War Department on February 23rd saying that they were shot down, missing in action. And my mother didn't hear anything again until my dad came back to Belgium in September.
Oh, wow.
Sent her a telegram from England saying that he was alive. So it was really tough on my mother, because not only did she have the 1-year-old baby girl, but my other sister was born when my dad was missing in action. So she was home with 2 little infant girl and a baby girl, not knowing if she'd ever see her husband again. And there's lots of, during that time, there were a lot of angst, as you can imagine, with the family. And there's lots of excerpts from letters, not only between my dad and my mother, but other members of the relatives, why they were missing action, which are very emotional during that time, because they didn't know whether they'd see their loved ones again or not.
Now, I know you have the book, Shot Down, but this to me sounds like a movie. This sounds like, something you could just watch. To me, it has that kind of Gone with the Wind kind of flavor to it. This heart, you love the characters. Their family's missing them. There's so much going on. Have you ever considered turning it into a movie?
Well, a lot of people who read the book tell me that it should be made into a movie, because even though it's all based on firsthand testimony by the people who were involved in the events, it reads like a novel. They say truth is stranger than fiction, and you can't make this stuff up. But I don't know, it's easier said than done. I'm working on it a little bit, but we'll see. I don't know. It's pretty difficult. There's a lot of books out there, but we'll see.
Yes, I know it's not that easy. There are a lot of books out there, but yours seems to be an incredible story. And to be a true life story, that's something this actually happened. Well, I just want to talk a little bit about the letters. What was that like for you as the son to read these letters? What did you get out of it? Or did you it was something that you expected?
No, I knew my parents had this box of letters from the war, but I never had time to read them until after I retired. And I just sat down one day by myself in a recliner and started reading through these. And it was I guess it was pretty emotional, because you're reading my parents' feelings back over 70 years ago. At, a very tumultuous time in history. World War II affected more people than any other event in history. It was really a tragic time. And so reading that, it was like, hearing my parents talking to one another, expressing their love for one another. My dad talking about what was happening over there. It was a pretty incredible experience. And so I said, mentioned a lot of those excerpts are in the book. Another thing about the book, there's over 200 time period photographs in the book, so you can visualize everything that you're reading about. Many of the pictures that were taken in Belgium in 1944.
Oh, wow, that's exciting. Did you see anything that really surprised you, as far as maybe you saw a date in the diary? Say that date was January 1st and your father's giving this experience of what's happening. And then you see a letter that he wrote to your mom on that same date. And did you notice anything? Because sometimes we don't want to scare our loved ones. So maybe he was going through this experience and he was sharing it in his diary, but on that same day he writes and says, everything is fine, we're all good here. Did you notice anything like that when you were reading it?
Not really, because as I said, he was pretty candid in the letters. There was one thing that was kind of funny about the letters, though.
Okay.
Because my mother was pregnant with their second child, my other sister. And in my dad's letters, he always referred to the baby as Steve or Stevie, but it turned out to be Nancy. I came along after the war. If my dad hadn't have made it back, I wouldn't be here.
We had to get him back so we can have you here with us today. And again, if you are just now tuning in, we are speaking to Mr. Steve Snyder, and we are discussing his book, not only his book Shot Down, but just a lot about his parents' life, his family's life, and World War II. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment in the comment section, because we are live right now and I am having just an enjoyable time recapping history. Mr. Snyder, when you went through this process, what is the one thing that really stood out for you? What made you, I don't know, I'm kind of blown away. This is not my normal, typical story. I'm always like business. Let me talk about business. Let me talk about layoffs, entrepreneurship. And you qualify based on my, requirements. You're an entrepreneur. This is your full-time business now. You're promoting your book. So I definitely love to hear about it. But this is not your typical everyday type of business.
No, it's been successful, though. It has a 5-star rating on Amazon. It's won over 25 book awards.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's got a wonderful reader response. But probably the most surprising thing or amazing thing is that I found the German Luftwaffe pilot that shot down my dad's plane.
You found it afterwards?
I located him and interviewed him for the book.
Oh, wow. Okay, before we even talk about what the interview was, what was that process like? Did you just wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to go looking for this guy? What did it take to find him? If you don't need to go into too many specifics, but what did it take?
Well, it never even dawned on me to try to find him, because I thought it'd be impossible. But I owe it all to my wife.
Okay.
One day my wife just casually said, well, why don't you try to find the German pilot that shot down your dad's plane? Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, she doesn't know what she's talking about. That's right. A crazy idea. That's idiotic idea. I was going to ignore her, but like a good husband, I did what she told me to do.
Listen to your wife.
Yeah, and I found Hans Berger, and I went on the internet, Google, trying to find a Luftwaffe pilot. A couple forums came up. I joined them. I posted an inquiry because I knew the day that my dad's plane was shot down, where it was shot down, the time of day it was shot down. And in a week, 2 guys got back to me, one from England and one from Belgium. Mm-hmm. And on that day, 12 B-17s were shot down, and the one that was shot down south of Chimay, Belgium, was shot down by Hans Berger. And actually, the gunners on my dad's plane, even though they didn't know it, shot down Hans Berger's plane. At the same time, they shot each other down.
Oh, wow.
He bailed out and made it through the war. And fortunately for me, he became a translator after the war, so he speaks perfect English.
No, that's interesting. Was he willing to do the interview immediately? Did you have to talk him into it? Like, this is getting interesting. I almost need some popcorn for this interview.
Well, the guy in Belgium, he was actually who told me about it. He was a Luftwaffe historian, written a number of books, and he knew Hans Berger.
Okay.
So he asked Hans if it was all right for me to contact him. Mm-hmm. But for the book, I actually just interviewed him over the telephone and through email. Mm-hmm. But he was very personable. Mm-hmm. Although at one point, because I kept bombarding him with all these questions. And at one point he goes, Steve, I don't really know you all that well, and you're asking me all these personal questions about the war. But, we developed a good relationship, and he gave me some wonderful insight that's in the book about what it was like to go up against the 8th Air Force in the Air War. And since the book was published, I've been to Munich, Germany, where he lives. He's now 95 years old. And I did film an interview with him. And I plan to go visit him this fall in September, because at 95, he doesn't have that many years left, and I don't know when I'm going to get back to Europe again. So I want to go see him. We've developed a really nice relationship. We become friends.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. It's like these two worlds merging. Before you interviewed him, did you have any expectations of the type of person or who he would be?
Well, that's a good question. I was just so excited and so thrilled that I found him, because all my dad knew is that he was shot down by German planes. And I never dreamed of being able to find him. And then I really felt a personal connection with him, because at one exact moment in history, his life and my dad's life intersected.
Mm-hmm.
And for the guys who fought in World War II, that was really the defining moment of their lives. It was the defining moment of my dad's life. So I really felt kind of a kinship with Hans Berger. And he was just like the American airman. He was a young 20-year-old guy fighting for his country, trying to do a job and trying to stay alive. And he said it was unfortunate that they had to be shooting against each other, but their country's at war, and that was their job.
You have to do your job. That is so incredible, so amazing. Where can people find your book?
Well, it's on Amazon. Most people get it on Amazon, but if somebody wants an autographed copy, they can go to my website and order an autographed copy. My website is stevesnyderauthor.com. My email is steve@stevesnyderauthor.com. But most people go on Amazon, but it's available almost where any books are sold. Any bookstore can order it if they don't carry it, or any library can order it if they don't carry it. And most of the major air museums in the United States carry it in their gift shops.
But that's wonderful. You have accomplished so much more than a lot of people could ever expect to accomplish. And you just set off to tell this story, your parents' love story, your dad's struggles. Sometimes when we go through a process where we have to get something out, it could be cathartic for us. But did you learn anything about yourself during this process?
Did I learn anything about myself?
Or find out anything? You know what I mean? Sometimes it's like you have this sense of accomplishment. You wrote it, you published the book.
Well, yeah, I definitely have a sense of accomplishment, because, when I first retired or earlier in life, whoever thought I would have written a book? I mean,
right.
When I told my friends, and work coworkers that I wrote a book, they're looking at me kind of like, yeah, right. You wrote a book, And I'm sure they thought, this can't be any good. Right. What does this guy know about writing a book? But it just shows you, life, can lead you down, mysterious paths. And then when they read the book, they were like shocked because how good it was, really, because the story is so amazing. Really, what I added to the book is just a tremendous amount of historical information and anecdotes about and surrounding the war to put it in context and give it background. But the story speaks for itself. So it's kind of like two books in one, the story of my dad and his crew and all the Belgian people. And then it's kind of a history about the air war over Europe and the 8th Air Force and World War II. As far as, I just got a much, my father and I had a great relationship. I loved him dearly, but it gave me much more of appreciation for what he went through. Especially when you consider when he was being hidden by the Belgian people, he could have just stayed hidden, just waited for the U.S. armies to come up and then liberate him. But he decided to get back in the fight and risk his life joining the French resistance to fight against the Germans, because he could have died in the fighting, or if the Germans had captured him, they just would have shot him right on the spot.
Right.
So I don't know if there was too many people. I don't know whether I could have had the courage and the bravery to go, okay, I'm getting back in the fight. I'm just gonna, leave where I'm being hidden and relatively safe
Mhm.
And put my life on the line, join up with these group of French resistance people who he didn't know from Adam. He's a foreigner. All these, he could speak a little French by that time, but they were all either Frenchmen, Belgians, Algerians,
Mhm.
And so he was a total outsider, but yet he joined up with them to fight the Germans. So I don't know whether I could have done that.
I think in all of that, to me, is still a beautiful, beautiful love story, because I can kind of imagine, I like putting my own imagination on things, but maybe he was hiding away and he's like, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. But if he joins the fight that ends this war, he can get back home to his children. He can get back home to his wife, and he can get back to life as normal. And love to me is one of the most amazing things, and it's definitely worth fighting for, as well as for your country and what you believe in. So I think it's wonderful. Now, Steve, we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I like to do at the end of every show is just allow my guests the opportunity to just speak to our viewers. We have quite a few people in the chat room. Elizabeth joined us, Rachel, Felicia, Gregory, Cecilia, Thomas, Sherry. So many people are tuned in to listen to your story. So please just speak to them and let them know what you want for them to take away from your interview.
Okay. Well, I'm also immediate past president of the 306 Bomb Group Historical Association. The 306 Bomb Group was one of the bomb groups in the 8th Air Force. My dad was in the 306. And I feel it's the duty of our bomb group, and really it's my goal to remember, honor, and educate, to remember the air war over Europe, to honor the men who fought it, and to educate the public about it. World War II is over 70 years ago. It's a long time ago. It's kind of fading in people's memory. And we can never forget the sacrifice of those brave young men who fought and died for freedom. As I mentioned, there is no other event in history that affected more people than World War II. 65 million people were killed. 75% of those people killed were civilians. Millions more were wounded. Millions more were left homeless and displaced. It changed the course of America and the world forever. So my tagline is it's our duty to remember, and that's what I'm trying to communicate to the general public, many of which know very little about World War II. But those were brave, brave men. And that's why I go to all these air shows signing copies of my book, and go speak a lot to different organizations to share the story and to share the memory so it doesn't fade.
Oh, that is so wonderful. Steve, please give us your website address again.
It's stevesnyderauthor.com, and the name of the book is Shot Down, The True Story of Pilot Howard Snyder and the Crew of the B-17 Susan Ruth.
Oh, I love it. I want to thank you for being a guest on today's episode of Ask Sharifah.
Well, thanks for having me. I greatly appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. You are so welcome. And of course, I have to thank all of our viewers for tuning in live to watch this interview. And as always, I ask that you go ahead and share this video, because friends don't let friends miss out on Ask Sharifah. And if you're interested in your own interview or to watch more of my interviews, please visit the website at AskSharifah.com. Until then, everyone have a wonderful day.